The evening light filtered through the windows of the small coffee shop as Olivia sat alone, her laptop open but forgotten as she stared at her bank account balance. The number glared back at her, a reminder of just how close she was to having to give up her apartment. She sighed and took another sip of her now cold coffee, wondering if she would have to pick up another shift at the bar this weekend. Olivia brushed her brown hair away from her face and looked around the quiet cafe. It was her favorite place to edit her photography work, affordable and peaceful. At 28, she had hoped to be further along in her career by now. The pile of unpaid bills in her bag felt heavier than they should. The bell above the door jingled and a man walked in. He stood out immediately. His suit looked expensive, his watch probably cost more than her rent, and his confident walk spoke of someone used to getting what he wanted. He ordered at the counter, then scanned the room slowly. His eyes met hers for a moment. Olivia quickly looked back at her screen, pretending to be busy. A few minutes later, a shadow fell across her table. "Excuse me," a deep voice said. "May I join you? All the other tables are taken." Olivia looked up, surprised to see the well-dressed man standing there with a coffee cup in hand. She glanced around the cafe. There were at least 3 empty tables. She raised an eyebrow but gestured to the chair across from her. "Thank you," he said, sitting down. "I'm James." "Olivia," she replied, closing her laptop slightly. Something about him made her curious despite her caution. He took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. "I'd seen you here before. You're always working on something." "I'm a photographer," she said, wondering why he had noticed her. "Are you good?" he asked directly. The bluntness of his question made her smile. "Yes, actually, I am." James nodded as if he had already known the answer. "I have a proposition for you, Olivia." Her guard went up immediately. She'd heard propositions from men before, and they rarely ended well. "I'm not interested in anything inappropriate." To her surprise, he laughed. "Nothing like that. It's a business arrangement I'm suggesting." He placed his expensive leather briefcase on the table and pulled out a business card, sliding it across to her. "I need someone with your qualities." The card was simple but elegant. James Bennett, Investment Director. She looked back at him confused. "My qualities? You're observant. Comfortable in your own skin. Not easily impressed." He leaned forward slightly. "I need a companion for business events. Someone to accompany me to dinners, functions, networking events. Nothing physical required." Olivia's confusion must have shown on her face because he added, "I'll pay you $500 per event." Her coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. That was more than she made in a week of part-time work. "Why would you pay someone that much just to attend events with you?" James' expression shifted slightly, revealing something vulnerable beneath his confident exterior. "I'm new to the city. These events are important for my business, but I find them challenging to navigate alone." Olivia studied him more carefully. Despite his expensive clothes and confident manner, there was something lonely in his eyes. "And why me? Why not hire a professional escort?" "Because I need someone real," he said simply. "Someone who won't just smile and nod. Someone who sees things others miss." Against her better judgment, Olivia found herself intrigued. And what exactly would this involve? "Have dinner with me tomorrow night," James said, standing up and leaving a business card on the table. "We can discuss the details then. My treat, of course, regardless of your decision." He left money for both their coffees and walked out, leaving Olivia staring at the card in her hand, her heart beating faster than it should for a simple business proposition. Olivia spent all day wondering if she should go to the dinner. She checked James's company online and found it was real and successful. Still, she texted the restaurant address and his name to her friend just in case. She arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, wearing her only nice dress, a simple black one that she kept for special occasions. The place was much fancier than anywhere she normally went. Crystal glasses sparkled on white tablecloths and soft music played in the background. The hostess led her to a private corner table where James was already waiting. He stood when he saw her, his eyes taking in her appearance with obvious approval. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm still not sure I should have," Olivia replied honestly as she sat down. James smiled. "Fair enough. Let's have dinner first, and I'll explain everything." The waiter appeared with menus, and Olivia's eyes widened at the prices. James noticed her reaction. Order whatever you want. This isn't part of our arrangement, just two people getting to know each other. Throughout the meal, James surprised her. He asked questions about her photography and actually listened to her answers. He seemed interested in her thoughts and didn't talk down to her. By the time they finished their main course, Olivia found herself relaxing despite her initial doubts. So, she said, placing her fork down, "Tell me about this arrangement you're proposing." James leaned back in his chair. "As I mentioned, I need someone to accompany me to business events. Someone presentable, intelligent, and genuine." "Why?" Olivia pressed. "You're successful, good-looking. You could find dates easily." Something flickered across his face, a moment of vulnerability quickly hidden. "I inherited my father's business 6 months ago after he died. I moved here to take over the main office." He swirled the wine in his glass. "In my world, people see the money, not the person. They want connections, not conversations." He looked directly into her eyes. "I have social anxiety. Large groups, networking, it's torture for me. Having someone by my side makes it bearable." Olivia hadn't expected such honesty, but why pay for it? "Because payment makes the boundaries clear. You're there because we have an agreement, not because you want something from me that I don't understand." His explanation made a strange kind of sense to her. "1 month," he continued. 5 events, $2,500 total. All you do is be yourself. Make conversation, help me navigate the social aspects. If at any point you're uncomfortable, you can walk away with payment for the events you've attended." Olivia thought about her rent, her bills, the photography equipment she needed to upgrade. "And there's nothing physical expected." "Absolutely not," James said firmly. "This is professional. The only physical contact would be what's normal in social settings, a hand on your back while walking, perhaps a dance if the event calls for it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "I've written everything down. Take it home, read it, think about it." Their desserts arrived, interrupting the conversation. As they ate, they talked about lighter things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled. Olivia was surprised to find herself laughing at his dry humor. When the check came, James paid without looking at the amount. Outside the restaurant, he called a taxi for her. "I hope you'll say yes," he said as he opened the car door. "But even if you don't, I enjoyed tonight." As the taxi pulled away, Olivia opened the folded paper. Inside was the agreement he'd mentioned, but also a check for $500 marked advance payment. A note at the bottom read, "Whether you accept or not, your time is valuable." Olivia stared at the check, her heart beating fast. Everything logical told her to tear it up, to stay away from this strange arrangement. But as she thought of James's lonely eyes and surprising kindness, she found herself wondering what it would be like to step into his world, even if just for a month. 3 days later, Olivia stood beside James at his first business event. The art gallery opening was filled with people in expensive clothes talking about investments as much as art. She wore a blue dress James had sent to her apartment that morning. "Just a suggestion," his note had said. The dress fit perfectly, making her wonder how he knew her size. James kept his hand lightly on the small of her back as he introduced her to various business associates. She noticed how his fingers trembled slightly when they entered crowded areas, the only sign of the anxiety he had mentioned. "This is Olivia, a talented photographer," he would say, giving her space to speak for herself, rather than explaining her. Olivia found these people surprisingly easy to talk with once she got past their practiced smiles. Her genuine interest in the art exhibits gave her natural conversation topics. She could see James relaxing beside her as the evening progressed. "You're very good at this," he whispered as they examined a large abstract painting. "At what?" she asked. "Making people feel comfortable. Making me feel comfortable." A tall man with silver hair approached them, his smile not reaching his eyes. "James Bennett, your father would be proud seeing you here." James's body tensed. "Mr. Harrington, thank you for coming." "And who is this lovely woman?" Mr. Harrington asked, his gaze moving over Olivia in a way that made her skin crawl. "Olivia Reed," James said, "a talented artist in her own right." Mr. Harrington took her hand, holding it longer than necessary. "And how did you two meet?" Before Olivia could answer, James said she refused to let me sit at her table at a coffee shop. I had to work hard to change her mind. Olivia smiled, surprised by his honest yet careful answer. Well, Mr. Harrington said, if you ever decide you prefer a more established company, my door is always open. He handed her a business card, ignoring James completely. After he walked away, James let out a breath. I apologize for him. He's an important client, but he's also a creep, Olivia finished. James laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Yes, exactly. His eyes held hers for a moment too long, something shifting in their depths. Later, as they moved toward the bar, a woman in a red dress stopped them. Her perfect smile faltered when she saw Olivia. James, darling, I didn't know you were bringing someone. Lisa, James nodded coolly. Yes, this is Olivia. The woman looked at Olivia like she was assessing competition. How interesting. James never brings dates to these functions. I'm not surprised, Olivia said without thinking. Most people here seem more interested in his wallet than his company. Lisa's smile froze as James coughed to hide a laugh. Excuse us, he said, guiding Olivia away. When they reached a quiet corner, he turned to her. That was Lisa Peterson, my ex-fiancée. Oh. Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize, James said. You were right. She left the day after my father died, when she realized I would need time to grieve before taking over the company. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Olivia could hear the pain underneath. Without thinking, she reached out and squeezed his arm gently, her loss. Something changed in James' expression, a softening around his eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. His gaze dropped to her hand on his arm, then back to her face. For a moment, Olivia forgot about their arrangement, about the money. She just saw a man looking at her like she was something precious. The spell broke when someone called James's name from across the room. He blinked, then smiled professionally again. Duty calls. As they walked toward the voice, his hand returned to the small of her back. But this time, Olivia noticed it lingered with a warmth that wasn't there before, and she found herself leaning slightly into his touch. 2 weeks into their arrangement, James called Olivia with an unexpected request. A business trip to a beachside resort had come up suddenly, and he needed her to accompany him for a weekend conference. It's outside our agreement, he admitted. I'll pay double the normal rate, plus all expenses. You'll have your own room, of course. Olivia hesitated. Spending an entire weekend together seemed different than the evening events they'd been attending, but their time together had been surprisingly enjoyable so far, and the extra money would help her buy the camera lens she'd been saving for. All right, she agreed. When do we leave? They flew first class the following Friday. Olivia had never flown anything but economy, and she couldn't help but enjoy the spacious seats and attentive service. James spent most of the flight working, but occasionally looked up to point out something interesting below or ask if she needed anything. The resort was even more luxurious than she had imagined, a sprawling property with private beaches and swaying palm trees. But when they reached the reception desk, there was a problem. I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, the manager said, but we only have your original reservation for a single suite. The second room you requested isn't available due to a booking error. Olivia tensed, watching James's reaction carefully. That's unacceptable, James said firmly. Ms. Reed needs her own accommodations. After several minutes of discussion, the manager apologized again. We're fully booked for a corporate retreat, but the suite does have 2 bedrooms. Would that be suitable? James looked at Olivia, leaving the decision to her. That's fine, she said, though her heart was beating faster than normal. The suite was larger than Olivia's entire apartment, with a shared living area, kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the ocean. The 2 bedrooms were on opposite sides, each with its own bathroom. I'm sorry about this, James said as they settled in. If you're uncomfortable, we can try finding a different hotel. It's fine, Olivia assured him. The rooms are practically in different zip codes anyway. His relieved smile made her feel warm inside. That evening, after a dinner with clients where Olivia charmed everyone at the table, they walked along the beach. The night was warm, stars bright above the dark water. They had both removed their shoes, and Olivia enjoyed the feel of sand between her toes. Tell me something real, James said suddenly. What do you mean? Something not in your professional bio, something you don't tell everyone. Olivia thought for a moment. I was engaged once, she said. He was a photographer too. We were going to start a studio together. James listened silently as she continued. He got an offer to work for National Geographic, his dream job. He said we could make it work long distance. She smiled sadly. Then he met a wildlife photographer in Kenya. That was that. Is that why you do freelance work instead of pursuing bigger opportunities? James asked softly. Olivia looked at him, surprised by his insight. Maybe. I never thought of it that way. They walked a bit further before James spoke again. I haven't slept well since my father died, he admitted. My therapist says it's complicated grief, whatever that means. He stared out at the dark ocean. Some nights I just sit in my office until morning comes. Without thinking, Olivia reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, his much larger hand warm around hers. Neither mentioned it, but neither let go as they continued walking. Suddenly, the sky opened up. Rain poured down without warning, soaking them instantly. James tugged her hand. Run. They raced back toward the resort, laughing as they splashed through puddles forming in the sand. By the time they reached their suite, they were both drenched. Olivia's thin dress clung to her body, and she could see James's shirt doing the same, revealing the defined muscles of his chest. Their laughter faded as they stood dripping in the entryway, suddenly aware of each other in a way that had nothing to do with their business arrangement. James's eyes darkened as they moved over her, and Olivia felt her breath catch. I should get changed, she whispered, but didn't move. Me too, James replied, his eyes still on hers. Neither of them moved for what felt like minutes, the air between them charged with something neither had expected to feel. James took a step toward Olivia, his hand reaching out to brush a wet strand of hair from her face. The simple touch sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. James, she whispered, not sure if she was warning him or encouraging him. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips met hers, Olivia felt something inside her break open. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, then deepened as she responded, her hands moving to his chest. She could feel his heart racing beneath her fingertips. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him. The feel of his body pressed to hers made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Reality crashed back suddenly. Olivia stepped away, her mind racing. We shouldn't, the arrangement. James ran a hand through his wet hair. You're right. I'm sorry. That was unprofessional. The word stung more than it should have. Olivia nodded stiffly. I should get changed. She retreated to her bedroom and closed the door, leaning against it. Her body still hummed with desire, but confusion clouded her mind. Was she just part of a transaction to him? Was that kiss real or just caught up in the moment? After changing into dry clothes, she stayed in her room, claiming tiredness. James didn't argue. The next morning was awkward. They both pretended nothing had happened, focusing on the conference schedule. Throughout the day, Olivia maintained professional distance, smiling at the right moments, making conversation with James's associates. But she felt his eyes on her when he thought she wasn't looking. That evening, James had dinner plans with important clients. Olivia begged off, saying she had a headache. Are you sure? James asked, concern in his eyes. Yes. It's probably just from all the sun today. It was easier than admitting she was confused about what was happening between them. Alone in the suite, Olivia wandered onto the balcony. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She tried to sort through her feelings. She liked James, more than she should. But how could she know what was real when money was involved? Her phone buzzed with a text message from a number she didn't recognize. Enjoying your weekend getaway with Bennett? I wonder what services you're providing that are worth $500 a night. Olivia stared at the message, her stomach turning cold. A moment later, another message arrived with a photo of her and James at the resort restaurant, his hand on the small of her back as they'd entered. The caption read, his father would be disappointed to see him with a paid escort. Anger and humiliation burned through her. She had no idea who sent the messages, but someone clearly thought she was sleeping with James for money. When James returned hours later, Olivia was waiting in the living room, her bag packed. What's wrong? He asked immediately. She showed him the messages. His face darkened as he read them. Who sent these? He demanded. I don't know. One of your business rivals, your ex. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I'll handle Fizz. No, she interrupted. This isn't working. I'm going home. Because of these messages, we can fix this. It's not just that. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Last night shouldn't have happened. This whole arrangement, it's too complicated now. Is that really why you're leaving, or are you afraid of what's happening between us? His directness caught her off guard. What is happening between us, James? I'm someone you pay to spend time with you. How can either of us know what's real? Pain flashed across his face. That's not fair. Last night had nothing to do with our arrangement, didn't it? Would you have kissed me if I wasn't here as your paid companion? Yes, he said without hesitation, but I wouldn't have met you at all. Olivia picked up her bag. I need to go, I'm sorry. She left before he could see her tears, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. 3 weeks passed without any contact between them. Olivia threw herself into her photography, taking any job she could find. She tried not to think about James, but memories of their kiss haunted her dreams. Several times she picked up her phone to call him, only to put it down again. What would she even say? One evening she was sitting in her favorite coffee shop, the same one where she had first met James, when her friend Megan rushed in waving a flyer. Look at this, Megan said, sliding into the seat across from her. The Whitney Gallery is having an open submission for new artists. You have to enter. Olivia looked at the flyer without much interest. The Whitney is one of the most exclusive galleries in the city. They never accept unknown photographers. But this is different. It's a special exhibit called Hidden Perspectives. They're looking for unseen moments. That's exactly what you capture in your work. Olivia thought about the photos she had taken secretly during her time with James, his rare, genuine smile, his concentration when listening to someone speak, the vulnerable look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. She hadn't meant to take them, but the photographer in her couldn't resist capturing those unguarded moments. Maybe, she said. Over the next few days, Olivia selected her best photos, including several from her time with James, though she was careful to choose ones where his face wasn't clearly visible. She submitted them without much hope, then tried to forget about it. 2 weeks later, she received an email that left her staring at her screen in disbelief. The Whitney Gallery wanted her photos for their exhibition. The opening night was crowded and bright. Olivia wore a simple black dress and tried not to fidget as strangers examined her work and discussed it. Critics and art lovers moved from photo to photo, sometimes nodding with approval. These have a remarkable intimacy, one woman said to her. How did you get such unguarded moments? I was invisible, Olivia answered honestly. As the evening progressed, Olivia began to relax. People genuinely seemed to like her work. The gallery owner mentioned potential buyers. It was everything she had dreamed of professionally. And yet something was missing. Someone was missing. She was explaining the lighting technique in one of her photos when she felt a presence behind her. Even before she turned, she knew who it was. Excuse me, she said to the small group around her, then turned to face James. He looked different, tired, with a shadow of stubble on his jaw. But his eyes were the same, watching her with that mixture of intensity and vulnerability that had always made her heart beat faster. Your work is beautiful, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. I saw the announcement in the paper, Hidden Perspectives by Olivia Reed. I had to see it. They stood awkwardly for a moment, surrounded by people, but focused only on each other. Some of these are from our time together, he said, nodding toward a photo showing his hands gesturing while talking, the city lights blurred in the background. Yes, she admitted. I hope you don't mind. You saw me, he said simply, the real me. No one has done that before. Olivia felt her throat tighten. James, I've missed you, he interrupted. I tried to respect your decision by staying away, but I've thought about you every day. I've missed you too, she whispered. He took a deep breath. I ended all the business relationships that might have been involved in sending those messages, including Lisa's family investments. Olivia's eyes widened. You didn't have to do that. I did, for myself. I'm tired of being surrounded by people who want something from me. He reached out slowly and took her hand, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he continued. I don't want to pay you for your time anymore, Olivia, but I'm hoping you might give it to me freely. The world around them seemed to fade as Olivia looked into his eyes. There was no more pretending, no more arrangement, just two people standing at the edge of something real. "I'd like that," she said softly. His smile, the genuine one she had captured in her photos, spread across his face. His fingers tightened around hers as they stood together, surrounded by the moments she had captured during their unusual beginning. 1 year later, Olivia stood on the balcony of James's penthouse apartment, looking out at the city lights. So much had changed since that night at the gallery when they had decided to try a relationship without any financial arrangements. The first few months had been both wonderful and difficult. James had insisted on keeping their relationship private at first, worried that people would gossip about how they met. Olivia had agreed, though sometimes it felt like he was still ashamed of their beginning. Behind her, she heard the sliding door open. James stepped out, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to her and stood beside her at the railing. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. Olivia smiled. "That's all they're worth these days." He laughed, the sound warm in the cool evening air. "Your thoughts are priceless. I was just being cheap." She leaned against him, enjoying the solid feel of his body next to hers. "I was thinking about us, how we started, how far we've come." James placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Best money I ever spent." "James," she swatted his arm playfully. "I'm serious," he said, turning to face her. "Meeting you changed everything for me." And it had. Over the past year, James had transformed from the anxious businessman who needed a paid companion to a man who could confidently handle social situations on his own. He still preferred small gatherings to large events, but the crippling anxiety was gone. Olivia had changed too. Her photography career had taken off after the Whitney exhibition. She now had regular clients and a small studio downtown. She had insisted on paying her own way in their relationship, turning down James's offers to help with rent or expenses. It was important to her that their love was built on equal footing, not financial dependence. "I have something for you," James said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not our anniversary," Olivia said, confused. "It's not a gift exactly, more of a proposal." Her heart skipped a beat as he pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. Inside was not a ring as she had half expected, but a letter. As she read it, her eyes widened. "James, this is an offer to be the official photographer for Bennett Enterprises' new environmental initiative," he finished for her. "Working with conservation groups around the world, it would mean a lot of travel, a lot of creative freedom. The pay is industry standard, not too much, not too little." Olivia stared at the letter. It was an incredible opportunity, the kind photographers dreamed about, but she couldn't help feeling uncertain. "You don't have to take it," James said quickly, reading her expression. "I just thought." "It's not that," she interrupted. "It's amazing, but I don't want special treatment because I'm dating the boss." James took her hand. "You're not. The board reviewed your portfolio along with 20 other photographers. They chose you because you're the best. I removed myself from the decision entirely." "Really?" she asked, still not entirely convinced. "Really. Though I can't pretend I won't be happy if you accept." His eyes met hers. "The project lasts 2 years. I know that's a long time to be traveling." "What about us?" Olivia asked quietly. James smiled. "That's actually the second part of my proposal." He reached into his pocket again and this time pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "This isn't because of the job offer," he said. "I've had this for months, waiting for the right moment. I love you, Olivia. I don't care if you take the job or not. I don't care if you're traveling for the next 2 years or staying right here. I just want to know that wherever you go, you'll come back to me." Olivia felt tears forming in her eyes as James dropped to one knee. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but his eyes revealing all the vulnerability she had first fallen in love with. Olivia pulled him back to his feet, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes to everything." As they kissed under the stars, Olivia thought about how strange life could be. A lonely stranger had offered her money for her time, but in the end he had given her something far more valuable, a love without price or time limits, a love that would last a lifetime.